And then I just want to make sure we're going to go live as well. So I'm going to give us just a moment to go live on online. So welcome everybody. Welcome to Vincent. I'm delighted to introduce him as our expert tonight for this interviewing skills workshop. I have a little bit to say about Vincent, but I'd love, Vincent, for you to introduce yourself as well. So you are an expert in career coaching, and you're the founder of Vincent Career Coaching, which is an online coaching program that helps ordinary people get incredible jobs with the pay and purpose that they deserve. I know a lot of people out there are looking for that move now, especially in these times where we have to pivot, we have to change. You specialize in helping job candidates interview with confidence and secure a job that enables them to enjoy the best that life has to offer. You've been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, lots of a different place, and you've been awarded National Business Journal's 40 Under 40. So really impressive career, and you've helped over 800,000 job seekers advance their careers. That is a phenomenal number. So we're really fortunate to have him here tonight in this intimate setting to share some insights and wisdom with us and to give you some feedback on your interviewing skills. So welcome, Vincent. Anything you'd like to share about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm humbled at the opportunity, and I'm really flattered by the invitation to be here. Job seeking is something that is not this like natural thing. And when you think about it, you only go through a job search a few times in your life, hopefully. It's not something that you do every single year or multiple times a year. And so it is this unnatural thing. And that's perfectly normal to feel like that. And if you're on here, and I know this is something that I've felt this way a lot in my past, you're not alone. And this is something where, just like anything else, you can learn it. There are things that you can do that are normal practices where if you educate yourself a little bit and you practice, and what a great opportunity this is to practice, that has been pulled together this evening. You can walk into interviews confident, and you can walk out of interviews feeling good about how you did. And a lot of this too is becoming comfortable with failure and understanding that that's part of the journey and part of the process, because like most things in life, you only need one yes, and you will end up being able to consider that job search a success. But thank you so much for everybody taking the time to be able to join tonight. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that intro. So, speaking of that one yes that people are looking for, and I know that some folks are really struggling out there, and they're really looking for that next opportunity, whether they're in a job now that's changing, or they've lost their jobs, or they're just looking at their longer term vision, or reimagining in that vision in some way because of COVID-19. So I know that people are concerned about, getting professional development, building their interview skills during this time. So, what advice do you have to give people about sharpening their interview skills during this time? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, that's a great question. For everybody that's on, just type a few words into the chat about what type of role you're going to be looking for, whether that's an industry, whether that's a function, career level. We're going to make sure to really cater this session to the types of roles that you're looking for. So if you just type a few words into the chat for the next hour, we'll keep all of that in mind. That's a great question in terms of the question. So, the question was, what advice can you give about sharpening your interview skills? And like everything in life, repetition and practice really, really helps. It's also one of the most uncomfortable things to do as well. Nobody likes, and I used to hate in school, like role-playing exercises, because it just feels so not real. Well, that experience, as uncomfortable as that is, makes the real experience way more comfortable. And one of the worst things that you can do is practice during actual interviews. So, a common question that I get is, if you have an opportunity to interview at a company where you're kind of just okay excited about the role, like it's not one that you're like really, really, really excited about, you should do that interview, because it's really great practice. And it's during those times where you have nothing to lose that it's going to be more comfortable for you. And then the repetition will make you really, really do well when it comes to the time that really matters. Because when you're interviewing at an incredible company, the one that you've been waiting for, you only get one shot at it. So it's really good to be able to practice beforehand. Now, when you're interviewing, you really have to think about what they're looking for on the other side of the table. And this was something that I didn't understand for the longest time. And this was something when I graduated from college, I made a big mistake because I didn't understand what hiring managers were looking for. I didn't understand what recruiters were looking for. I didn't understand what employers were looking for. So I'll give you an example. A common question is, why are you interested in this job? So there's your answer. Well, I need money. And that's an honest answer. But if you're looking at that from the employer's perspective, your answer could be, well, in your head, could be, well, I've always wanted to live in New York, and this job is in New York. It's in the industry that I'm excited about. So it's kind of a perfect opportunity for me. That doesn't benefit the company, though. And so one of the first things that you'll want to think about is from the company side of the table, what are they thinking? And so you can think of like an answer such as, well, I'm really excited. And earlier today, I recorded a podcast with a recruiter from Tesla. And, she was telling me about Tesla's mission to expand electric vehicles, Tesla's mission to be able to increase the number of households that are reliant on solar instead of fossil fuels. And so a great answer to that could be, I'm excited to be a part of the journey at Tesla in really changing the world and decreasing society's dependence on fossil fuel. It's perfectly okay for your answer in your head to be, I need money, or this is in my dream city that I want to live in, or this is my dream company because I'm excited about that. But one of the first things I would really think about is, how can you show the employer that you can benefit the employer? And we'll expand on this more as we keep talking here on kind of how to frame your answers.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that, Vincent. And I also want to echo all of your advice, and that all of your advice is very applicable to colleges as well, because colleges are like employers seeking a mutual benefit between you and their mission. So it's not enough to say, I want to go to your college because it's a great college, or I want to go to your college because it's in the city I want to be in, or it has the major I want. But how are you going to benefit them, and how do you align with their mission and their goals as well? So a lot of folks who responded to your question early on, Vincent, said they were interested in college interviews, and I'm telling you that your example is spot on, not only for the job search, but also for college interviews. So it's really
Oh my
important
gosh,
that
so
people,
true.
yes, so it's really important that folks get clear about that. And when I was interviewing students in admissions, a lot of them didn't really understand the institution or what they wanted, and they were really nervous. And it's understandable that you'd be nervous on an interview, but if you can prepare, as Vincent said, that will really help you go a long way. And there are a lot of strategies to do that. I'd love to hear from you, Vincent, maybe about a couple of strategies that have worked for you, or have worked for people that you have worked with, for people to prepare. What's a good way to prepare for interview?
Yeah, it's doing research. Doing research and really getting an understanding of the college or whether it's the employer, and having an informed perspective. What I mean by an informed perspective, if I use a college example, for instance, is colleges want students who are going to be active on campus. They want students who are going to contribute to the environment, the culture, and further, the environment. And so one of the things that I always looked for was student organizations that I would want to be involved in. And so this is the same thing, whether it's an employer or whether it's a college. If it's an employer, I'd be looking for projects that I would really want to be a part of. Projects like, and you heard the example earlier from Tesla, whether it's on the car side, whether it's on the solar side, really have a perspective about a department or a project or a product or a service that you would be really excited about being a part of, and really position and show how you can contribute to that. On a college specific example, when I was in college, I went to UCLA, and they have an organization called UCLA Unicamp. It is a large student organization that has been around since the 1930s, and every single year, Unicamp takes over 1,000 college or high schoolers um, up to the mountains to camp, and these are inner city LA students who typically have never been outdoors or camping. And I had the fortunate opportunity where I grew up with a swimming pool, and I realized at that moment that that was a very privileged position that I was in, something that I completely took for granted, that I knew how to swim. And so, we had an opportunity to be able to go change lives. And that was something that I was really excited about. And I took the time to do my homework about the things that I would be involved in. Obviously, your major is important. Obviously, you got to tie that to your future career. And, you're taking a look at all the rankings. But if you have something like that, where you're going to say, I'm going to be that person who's really going to go above and beyond, whether it's a job or whether it's a college, this will help make you stand out, because it'll be extremely memorable in an interview. But on top of that, I guarantee you it'll be a step above what the normal kind of average answer is. Because the average answer would look like something like, I'm really excited because this is a great university and I would be excited to be there. But it's a very non-specific answer, that's almost the easy way out.
Mm. No, absolutely, absolutely. And building on what you said, Vincent, I think it's so important for candidates for admissions and for jobs also to be really clear on what value they add. So really doing a deep dive back into your past experiences, thinking about where you shined, and having those experiences ready to share, can
Mhm.
be really helpful to make it concrete that you want what they're offering, what their mission is. And here's an example of how you could contribute to that based on experience that aligns with what they're looking to accomplish.
That's absolutely right. And so, if you've kind of followed the journey of what we're saying, or what we've kind of shared so far, it's understand from the other side of the table what they're looking for and what they're excited about. Do your research and gain an informed perspective on why you're really passionate and why this is an opportunity that you'd be really excited about. And then the third step right after that is really show how your past experiences are indicative of your future behavior, either at that school or at that company. Meaning that somebody that wasn't that involved in high school in extracurricular activities likely might not be in college. Somebody who had a poor academic performance in high school likely would also do the same thing in college. There's obviously exceptions to that, but generally people don't take a 180. So what you want to do is you want to be able to show how your accomplishments and how your results in the past were really as a result of your behaviors and your actions and who you are as a person, which you will bring with you going forward. So getting a little bit more tactical here, there's something that's called the STAR method. And whether you're interviewing for a scholarship, whether you're interviewing for a job, whether you're interviewing for college admissions, this is applicable everywhere. So the S stands for situation. The T is a task. The A is an action. And the R is a result. You want to spend a little bit more time on the A and the R than you do the S and the T. You just had just asked me, what are some of the worst things that you do in an interview? And rambling is one of them. Not being concise in your answer is one of them. So you can just quickly frame up an example. Let's say you're asked the question, tell me about a time in the past where you ran across some type of challenge and you were able to overcome it. A challenge for me could have been something like, in the past, I was a part of a student organization, And we had to fundraise $5,000 to pay for buses to go for a beach cleanup. That was the situation. So the task was we had to raise the $5,000. The action would be something like we pulled together a committee, and it was a group of volunteers. And then we researched local businesses and we split up the list. And each person on the committee went to a local business and asked them for a donation. It was a really uncomfortable process. And I was really fearful about doing it. But I realized that I wanted to contribute to the team and I didn't want to let the team down. So I went and I approached my businesses, and the other people on the team did as well. And at the end of that, we were able to raise that $5,000. And with that, we were able to make a donation to a nonprofit and get that beach cleaned up. So I just went through the situation, which was we needed to fundraise money. The task was specifically we needed $5,000. The action was forming that committee. And the other action was I, specifically me, went and solicited these businesses. And the result was, as a collective team, we were able to deliver and raise the 5,000. And what you'll notice in there is that I'm showing collaboration with other people, but I'm also making it abundantly clear that I wasn't just a passive participant in it, that I was a leader in it, and that I also contributed while also leading the entire effort. The R for the result, you want to show some type of numbers in there. And so those numbers could be any type of number. In this instance, it's we fundraised the 5,000, but it could be we improved the membership of the organization and we grew our membership by 15% from last year to this year. Or, last year we had an event and we had this many people, and this year we were able to increase the number of people by 50 people. And so this STAR method is really, really helpful for having a really concise way of answering this question that will walk you through how you were able to accomplish what you accomplished and really convey that to the person that's interviewing you.
Thank you. That's great advice. And I actually use that STAR method all the time with my students, not only talking about the interview, but also about resume bullet points and certain essays where they have to convey how they added value in a specific situation. It's a great way to think about kind of the full picture of what somebody would need to know in order to be able to understand the contribution that you made and the results of that contribution. So I think we're at a good point to transition to our first hot seat. So Amy, I'd love for you to take a moment to select somebody who has volunteered in advance, bring them up with us, and we can get them on the hot seat. And then while we're doing that, I guess I'll ask you one more question. Just any kind of lessons to share in general based on any specific interviewing experience you had, a story that, where you felt somebody really shined, or a situation you were in where you felt like you did a really good job.
Yeah, I've had an interview right now. A lot of interviews are happening virtually. They're happening over just like this, like with a webcam. And I actually did a virtual interview for a job that I had almost 7 or 8 years ago. It was before even like video conferencing was super prominent. And let me share some of the things that are kind of unique about video interviewing compared to regular interviewers. The first one is you want to have good lighting. So you can see right now on both of our screens, you can see we're very clearly lit. What you don't see is I actually have a desk lamp right on the table, right in front of me. And the windows are to the side of me, not right behind me. So you want to avoid, if you have windows right behind you, it actually makes you really, really dark and hard to see. In terms of microphones, it's better to use some type of wired microphone that's plugged in instead of using the one on your laptop, because when I get really nervous, I get fidgety and I tap on the desk. And if your laptop is sitting on your desk, it'll pick that up in the microphone. And so those are some of the things to keep in mind. And I'll leave you with one last thing that I love about virtual interviews. You can write the answer to your star just on a Post-it note, and you can actually stick it on the screen right below your camera. So right now I'm holding this up and I'm looking at the exact middle of my Post-it note, and it looks like I'm looking pretty close to my camera, right? And so if you are doing this, you'll have your cheat sheet right up on your screen with you. Don't write out every word that you want to say, just a couple quick bullets, and it'll really help you remember where you're going. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. I think we have our first potential helper here who is going to volunteer for our hot seat. So I'm going to bring up Jacob to join us on the panel here.
Hi, Jacob.
Let's see if that works. There he is. Jacob, hope you're doing well. Good to see you on here. I've just unmuted you. Can you say something to make sure we can hear you? Okay, unfortunately we can't hear Jacob, so let's go to the next person who might support us, and I'll ask you another question in the meantime, Vincent. So I'm curious about like any interviews that you can recall that you either sat on the panel or you sat in the interview seat. Like, give us a snapshot of what that environment was like and what made it sort of the best interview experience or the worst interview experience.
Yeah, great question. So the last time that you went to a grocery store, right? Did you go to the cashier? Like, have you had an interaction with the cashier?
Yeah.
And you know how some of those interactions, they're very transactional. Like, you're having a conversation with a cashier, but everything that you're talking about is about the transaction. And you might have some pleasantries. Hi, how's your day going? Oh, it's good. Have you ever had one of those interactions where you actually get to know that person as a person? Because they are a person, right? They're a human being, and they have a personality, they have a family. Have you ever had one of those interactions?
Definitely.
Definitely. That's the difference between an incredible interview and an average interview. In incredible interviews, and I've done interviews with thousands of candidates throughout my career. It's the ones where their personality really shines through, and I get a chance to know a little bit about them as a human and as a person. Because when you're looking at different resumes, you're looking at different transcripts. And I've been a reader on scholarship applications. Some of them are very cut and dry. I did this. I accomplished this. On others, you really get to know a person as a person. And that's one of the things that I would say absolutely stands out on great interviews is you don't have to put on this mask where you're hiding your personality. If you're comfortable kind of letting that down a little bit and showing a bit of who you are. And obviously there are things in terms of like professionalism where you should maintain certain boundaries. But if you can just pull back a little bit and let your personality shine through, it really makes a difference.
I totally agree. And I think that could be such a hard thing to let that shine because people are afraid of turning people off. But if you can show that side of your personality, make that connection, that's going to be such a potential better fit. That's also a way for you to test your fit with a company, with a college. If somebody is going to be turned off by your personality, which we hope you wouldn't do anything to purposefully turn them off, of course. But if you're not clicking with them or something, that could be a sign that there's not a good culture fit or it's just not meant to be. So we do have another person who we brought up who had previously volunteered. So I'm going to see if their audio is working. Hello? Is that Shailja? I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. We've never met, but nice to meet you. Oh, we have some shy people tonight. We had a lot of people volunteer, and I don't know, it's like the audio is an issue. So Amy, why don't you pull up a couple more people and see if anybody is their audio can be working? We'd love to do some interview hot seats. And if like the next person doesn't work, like I will be in that interview hot seat. I'm not prepared an interview in a very long time, and you can give me feedback. So we'll go with that if our next person doesn't work out. So actually, why don't we start with that, and then when somebody hopefully works out to come up, we can bring that person up to join us. And if you're having any technical issues and you did volunteer, or if you want to raise your hand now to volunteer, Amy will help you get up to the panel with us.
Yeah, on the bottom of your window, there's a little raise hand button. So if you didn't volunteer in advance, just hit that little raise hand button.
Max.
Oh, we got some hand
there we
raisers.
go. The raised hand. That was cute. That was great. That was a good. So we're gonna bring up. Wow, we got a lot of takers. So let's see who we can get, whose audio can get working, and you will be the lucky winner. Max, does your audio work?
Let's see, hopefully.
Hey, Max.
Yay.
Max,
Awesome.
good to see you. Max is part of our upcoming Emerging Leader Internship Program. So happy to see you, Max. And thank you for bravely volunteering for this hot seat. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
So I'm going to go on mute, and Vincent, I'd love for you to take it away, and let's do a mock interview right here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Max, before I throw you the question, tell me a little bit about like what your dream job is or what you're going to be interviewing for next.
So let's see. My dream job would probably be something in finance.
Okay.
Maybe investment banking. I'm really looking at that. It's interesting.
Awesome.
In mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
Yeah,
you can't go wrong
good.
with a path. You know, anything where you're taking a look at sharpening your quantitative skills is something that's really, really good. That's one of my big regrets is as I was going through college, I took the other route. I said, hey, what degree can I get and take as least number of math courses as possible? And once I got into the business world, that was something that I really had to sharpen myself. So I love the approach that you're taking. So my question for you is just tell me a little bit about yourself. Oh, did we lose you?
I might be back. Let's see.
Oh, you're back.
All right. Awesome.
So my question for you, Max, is tell me about yourself. This is a very common interview question. Typically one of the first questions that you get.
All right. I'm a sophomore in high school. So the big part of my life is I'm a competitive sailor. So in sailing, I'm a single-handed competitive sailor. That's a big part of my life. I am involved in theater, especially as a producer, as a director, directing like other students in high school. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm also a part of a Math Honor Society. I'm involved in competitions, and specifically in like statistics and algebra.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm trying to bring up my Instagram account right now to show you that we have something in common.
Nice.
What type of boats do you sail on?
I sail lasers. Yeah, sailing them this week. Awesome.
How'd you feel about that answer? First off, in the chat for everybody, can we give Max a round of applause? Can we just like throw him a great job in the chat? If you thought Max did a great job on that, you know, it takes a lot of courage to be able to answer a question, especially when you don't see that. Max, Caitlin says, great job. Nancy says, awesome. Emma says, great job. Susan says, clap, clap, clap. I didn't even know you could do emojis in Zoom chat. That's awesome. So Max, how'd you feel about that answer?
Well, I guess it presented me how I am. I'm not entirely sure what it gave to the interviewer, right? And it kind of started rambling a little bit, like you said.
Yeah,
I tried not to though.
Yeah, I thought you did a great job, like as a first answer, right? You know, like you didn't know what the question was going to be in advance, and this is why you're here, is to be able to practice. So the question, tell me about yourself. There's 3 different kind of quick answers that you want to be able to give in that answer. First one is think a little bit about the past. Then you want to talk a little bit about the present, and then you want to talk about the future, because the future is where you can show, Max, to your point, that future value that you're going to be able to show there. And when you're talking about the past, we talked a little bit about the STAR method and the accomplishments. I would take that as an invitation to talk about the thing that you're the most proud of. So Max, in your competitive sailing, like what is the thing that you're the most proud of that you've been able to accomplish there?
What is it? I was ranked top 20th in Grand Prix rankings in North America for junior sailing.
That's what
So
you
yeah.
should have said. That's
Okay.
exactly what you should have said, because that, I assume that was pretty hard, right? Like I'm a pretty bad sailor, and my problem was I didn't practice enough. Like I didn't have the diligence to wake up early enough on enough mornings to get out there and really work on it. And so when you say that, the difference between I'm a competitive sailor is Vincent, I could have been a competitive sailor, but it doesn't mean I was a good one.
Okay.
And what you just described there in terms of how you're ranked, you quantified it and you made it clear that you were above average. And that's what's great about being able to describe that in the past. In the present, you can show a little bit just about what you're working on. But in the future, and that's really where it matters, is what we talked about earlier in terms of aligning to an organization's mission. That's a great opportunity to go, this is what I've done in the past. I've been really great at it. I've accomplished X, Y, and Z. And in the future, I'm looking forward to attending a university where I can yada, 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 where I can contribute on campus by doing X, Y, and Z, or where I can join a company and be able to make this type of impact in improving the customer experience at the company, or by being able to make the company improve efficiency, or to be more productive, or to, in your instance, make better decisions on investments.
Okay.
Thank you, Max, for volunteering. We had a lot of volunteers, so I'm going to bring up another volunteer to get some experience. Our next volunteer is Caitlin Joe, who's also part of our Emerging Leader Internship Program. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hey, Caitlin.
Hello.
How are you doing? Caitlin, if you could wave a magic wand in the future, like what do you want to do?
If I were to wave a magic wand in the future, well, obviously right now it's a whole situation with the COVID-19, and now we have Black Lives Matter movements happening across the country. So I think one of the things, it sounds kind of cheesy, I guess, but world peace would be probably ideal, because there's so much hurting that's going around. So many lives are being lost. So many people are being affected. So if I could just wave a magic wand and make that all go away, I think we truly could have better connections across different countries and build stronger relationships between each other.
Caitlin, let me ask you a question. Do you think that decades ago, when somebody said, we want to put a human being on the moon, like if you could wave a magic wand, like what could you accomplish? And somebody said, I want to put a human being on the moon. Like, didn't that kind of sound crazy?
Yeah, I would think a decade ago or before we put a man on the moon, I think people would have thought that person was crazy, but sometimes the craziest ideas are actually what makes people advance forward in society. It's the people who think differently than others, they're the people who will get things done and try to figure out different ideas of how to make lives better.
Caitlin, I think you should be on here giving this talk, because I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you.
It takes somebody to say it out loud and for somebody to chase after it to really be able to make a difference in the world. And I love that you're thinking that way. And I love that you're thinking about the difference that you can make in terms of the impact on others, because most people are thinking about what they can accomplish for themselves, not the impact that they can have on other people and how they can help other people. So absolutely commend that. So my question for you is, tell me about what you perceive to be one of your weaknesses or one of your opportunities.
One of my weaknesses would definitely be like, I can be too honest at times where it comes across a bit blunt. So I would, my friend, our chem midterm was coming up, and my friend, she was really worried about her chem grade right now. She was always talking to me about it and stressing out about it. And I told her, oh, I think we should study together, or you should start studying right now because the midterm's coming up soon. And I think she took it the wrong way. I think she took it like as I was telling her what to do and what she should be doing with her life. That was not my intention at all. I was just trying to make sure that she would raise her grade because that was what she wanted me. That was what she was complaining to me about. So that's
Mm.
definitely one of my weaknesses.
So what did you learn from that situation?
I learned to first think about how other people, what they're thinking, and how they would perceive what I would say and how my actions would affect them first. So I think, again, the world would be a better place if everyone just stopped for a moment and took the time to really understand each other before coming to certain assumptions. So that's
Mhm.
a very valuable lesson I learned, and I will definitely continue to improve on that.
That's great. And if you ran into that situation again in the future, maybe with a different friend, what would you do differently?
Well, if I were to run into this situation again, I would definitely, if it did come across to that point, I would definitely apologize and I would try to explain my intentions. And I would try to help them also, like, directly and basically help them study for the chem test. And I think that would show that my true intentions, and I think that would resolve any misunderstandings.
You just gave the perfect answer to that question. And I didn't even give you like the answer. Like you had all of that in your head already. So the only thing that I did was I asked you two questions after the first question. So first question is, what is your opportunity? What is your weakness? Second one is, what did you learn from that? And the third one is, what would you do differently? The only difference between this interview and a real interview is, in a real interview, the interviewer probably wouldn't ask you those two follow-up questions. And so as you're talking about your opportunity, the interviewer might not ask you, what did you learn from it and what would you do differently? You want to give those answers anyway, because what you just did was you talked about a weakness, but more importantly, you talked about what you learned from it and you talked about what you would change, which means that in the future, when you go to that school, when you join that company, it's no longer a weakness because you've already learned from it and you've already adjusted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, great job. Can we all give Caitlin a
Yeah,
round of
great
applause?
job, Caitlin. Thank you. Yay. Yay, Caitlin. That's great. Well, I think we have time for one more person to come up and we can do another sample. Great job to both Max and Caitlin. We're going to bring up Prab to the panel. So let's say hello to Prab. Prab. Hey,
Hi.
can hey,
Hey,
good to
Prab.
see you, Prab. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thanks
Good.
for bravely volunteering.
Yep.
So, Prab, tell us a little bit about same question as the other two. Tell us a little bit about what you're interested in and what you're passionate about in the future.
Yeah. So throughout high school, I was really interested in the intersection between social impact and business and kind of merging the two fields. Because I think that a common misconception is that if you're in business, you're only in it to make money and you're only in it for yourself. And I think
Yeah.
my goal throughout high school was to combat that notion and try and launch a social venture that would help alleviate those like misconceptions in society. So what I did was I basically found a local problem in my community and I founded a 501c3 tax exempt nonprofit to solve that problem. And I helped impact over 1,500 students, both locally and nationwide, in preparing for and excelling at standardized tests for the college admissions like purpose, like the SAT, ACT, PSAT, etc. And we basically worked with low income individuals that couldn't otherwise afford that preparation because Kaplan, Princeton Review, those name brand companies charge a lot of money for it. And I think the biggest takeaway from that whole venture was that if you really put your mind to some idea and it started off as like a brainchild and you actually put the time and effort into like getting it to the level it needs to be, it can actually make an impact on lives. And then the reward is really immeasurable. Like beyond like the numeric quantitative reward. Okay, I helped this many people get their scores up from X to Y. You see that, the non-tangible impact of people's lives being changed and people's, perceptions of what they can do being changed. I think that was really great for me. And then that kind of
That's
foreshadowed.
really great. Like,
Yeah.
when I hear about that, like, it makes me so excited about the future and like who's going to be leading our country and the world in the future. Part of the reason why I asked you that question is when you go into an interview, sometimes you think that there's an official start to the interview.
Correct.
And that this is just like a casual question before an interview. The interview has always started. And what I liked about what you did there was you went straight into talking about results, accomplishment, and how you can make a difference, even though the environment that we were in was kind of just a casual, like, oh, hey, we haven't started interviewing yet. This is just, we're just chit chatting. So kudos there. Be concise. So just make sure that you're really, really crisp on what your response is. I thought you were really, really polished there. So let's go into the interview question, if you're okay with that, the one that we had planned. Is that cool?
Let's do it.
Tell me about what your goals are in the next 5 to 10 years from now.
So in the next 5 to 10 years, I'd like to obviously successfully complete my college education, graduate, and then from there enter the business world, and try to make an impact both on my career and on others. I think the best way to do that is to probably start with some company in which I can, build myself up both professionally and as a person. And then from there, I dream to actually launch a social venture that is both socially and economically sustainable, so that basically the impact that it creates sustains itself throughout the profits that it garners from society. And I mean, I think my dream is to launch a B corporation, if you're familiar with that designation. And that's kind of what I want to do with the future, in terms of once I've actually established my professional career right out of college.
Yeah, I think that's great. Certified B corporations are there's a lot of them now, way more than there used to be, and it's something that investors and customers are now looking at in terms of when you make purchasing decisions. Now, it used to be like you were just looking for good products, and now you really want to work for companies, purchase from companies that are making a positive impact in the world. I thought the answer overall was really great. You gave a clear vision for short term as well as long term. If there's one thing, if I were being really nitpicky, it's don't be afraid to use common languages. And what I mean by that is sometimes if there's a simpler way, the simplest way to say something to be able to bring something to life, that sometimes will help other people be able to follow an answer. Does that make sense? Meaning that if you want to say that you want to start a company that is able to survive for decades and can make a big impact in the world, you can simply say that you want to start a company that's going to make a big impact, and to give examples that kind of illustrate that. Meaning that not everybody is in the business world. I think I understood what you were saying because I knew what a B Corp was, but don't be afraid to be able to share examples. So an example could be like, oh, have you heard of Tom's? Tom's is a great example of a company. And that kind of helps other people just follow on the journey with you if they're not in touch with the specific context of what you're talking about.
Thanks for that advice, and great job, Prab, and thanks for volunteering. Oh, Vincent, you're muted, I think.
Yeah, great answer. I'm so excited about what you set out to go build in the future. There's so many incredible B Corps when I think of the Patagonias of the world. And, kudos to you for going out and in the future starting one of those.
Excellent. Well, thanks to everybody who volunteered for hot seats, and thanks to everybody who got up here to do a hot seat as well. That was a lot of fun. We wanted to use the last 10-15 minutes or so to just debrief on takeaways from the hot seats and see what other questions that you have in the audience. I know we have a lot of raised hands, and so I'd be curious to hear from those folks. You could type something into the Q&A chat or chat if you have a question for us about interviewing. Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to make sure you have an answer to, we'd love to hear from you. So while people are thinking of their questions, Vince, I'd love for you to share some takeaways you have from those three candidates that we interviewed here on our hot seats. Oh, mute.
I think the first and foremost is, the future does have a lot of uncertainty right now. And I know where you're sitting, you're wondering likely the same questions that even I'm thinking. What is it going to be like in 5 years from now? Are the businesses that I know of as businesses today that I would like to work for in the future, will they be around in 5 years from now? So something that I haven't shared, I graduated in 2009 during the last recession, and companies that were like staples of our economy just went out of business. Merrill Lynch ended up getting purchased by Bank of America, and you are doing the right thing right now. Just the fact that you're here with us today means that you're on the right path. If you take the time to learn some of these just simple strategies, these are going to be the things that are going to help you. And for everybody on the hot seat today, you did a great job. You did a great job. And it is way harder to give that answer here today with an audience than it is in an interview. Because in an interview, it's just you and the interviewer, or you and a much smaller panel. So number one, kudos to having the courage to volunteer. That's big. When I take a look at the three answers, they were all just really solid answers. If I had to kind of pick my major takeaways, when you practice these interview questions and interview answers, it helps you get very precise in what you're saying. Because a lot of the times, I know for me, when I ramble, it's because I'm not really sure where I'm going to go next. But if I have the 2 or 3 bullet points of what I want to cover, then it allows me to be able to move from one area to the next. Meaning, in that tell me about yourself question, I can very quickly talk about my past, my present, and my future. And by practicing, I can get those just 3 bullet points on what I want to cover in that answer. Same thing for the STAR method. I can just write a few words for what I'm going to say for each of those. And it allows me to go from one to the next. And, the delivery across all 3 people on the hot seat, I thought did an incredible job. And I mean, that was evident. I mean, you all saw the exact same chat that I saw of all of the good job and all of the kudos. So I think everybody should feel really proud.
Absolutely. And I think that all of the candidates demonstrated really positive energy when they spoke. So we couldn't see their faces, but we heard, I think, a brightness in their voices as well. And one of the tips I give people, I know we're getting a lot of questions about Zoom interviewing, and this is something I have to practice myself when I'm making videos or when I'm on video. Sometimes you have to smile a little bit more than you would normally to make your voice come out brighter. So if I have my mouth kind of constricted and you can't hear me, it doesn't sound so great. But if I open up my jaw a little bit more, then I sound more authoritative. I sound more confident. I sound more engaged in the conversation. So in terms of the Zoom interview, making sure you get the lighting, as Vincent said earlier, is well thought out. You can test that before you go on the interview. And then also practicing your video presence is helpful watching TEDx or TED Talks can be a great way to practice and see what they're doing and how people use their hands and all of that. So all those things can be practiced and mimicked, and then obviously has to be natural for your body and your natural way of talking and being. So
yeah. So we got some really great questions that were submitted in the Q&A. So I see one from Jacob in the chat: is eye contact important during a Zoom interview? This is one that's actually counterintuitive, because when you're looking at the person doesn't perceive you as looking at them. It actually looks like you're looking somewhere else. And so like on my screen, if I'm looking at my co-host here on the session, this is actually what it looks like if I look at you on my computer monitor. So for everybody who's looking at that, does it look like I'm looking at does it look like I'm like engaged and making eye contact there? Just type a yes or no in the chat if it looks like I'm making good eye contact on here. I assume it doesn't, because yeah, so I see a lot of no's. I see a lot of nopes, nope, not really. And so this is what it looks like when I'm actually looking at the person that I'm talking to right now. Now, this is what it looks like if I'm looking at the camera. Does this look better? Just give me a yes or no. Like, does this look better or worse than it did before? I'm saying much better. Yeah, with an exclamation point, better. So yeah, eye contact is absolutely important on a Zoom interview. And what's kind of counterintuitive here is you want to look at the camera, not look at the other person when you're talking. So when you're talking, you want to look at the camera and not the other person. This is even trickier if you're using an iPad, because when it's in landscape mode, the camera is actually on the very side of the iPad, not on the top, like on a laptop. One of my tips is don't make the Zoom window full screen. Actually, just make it smaller and stick where the video of the other person is. Make that just a small square and put it right under your webcam. That way, if you're looking at them on your screen, it will look like you're looking at them. Then I put my 2 little post notes right on the side of that.
wow, that's a great Zoom tip. Certainly looking at the camera, it may feel unnatural or performative, but it's easier to make eye contact or to show that connection if you're looking at the camera, even though unfortunately it means you can't necessarily look at the person exactly right on. But you gave a great tip there for how you can kind of go between the two as needed. Got a lot of other great questions. Any ones that stand out to you, Vincent, that you want to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take Annie's question on the top, but you can also upvote questions as well. So I think everybody here can see all the questions. So hit the thumbs up button, where if you have the same question, hit that, and then we'll work our way there. So Annie's question is, how should you make your answers sound less canned or recited? The first one I would say is don't recite your answer. And now I know that sounds really easy to be able to say, but something that I try to avoid doing is writing out my answers word for word ever. And the reason is because, yes, it's nice to have the word for word, but then I get so focused on trying to memorize the exact words that I'm going to say that's how it ends up sounding rehearsed. And so let's go back to the example that I gave earlier about the beach fundraiser, the beach cleanup, right? If I had to take notes on that, I would just simply put situation, had to raise $5,000 for beach cleanup. Task, situation, we had a beach cleanup. We needed to pay for buses. We needed to pay for t-shirts. We needed to get food for the volunteers. Task, needed to raise $5,000. Action, put together a committee. Action number 2, solicited businesses. Result, raise $5,000 and clean the beach. So obviously what I just said is not what I would say in an interview, but that is what I would write on my post-it notes. So then at that point, it's impossible for it to sound rehearsed because I don't have the exact words. Sometimes when you're like so focused on getting those like smart sounding words in, like if I script it out, I'm going to be like, oh, we had a very arduous task where we had to pull together a large group of people, versus when I'm just talking naturally and not trying to sound smart. That's where it comes off as much less rehearsed, but it's also the way that people normally talk. And so it's okay to be human. And, where it's logical to be able to use specific words to describe what you're doing, that's great. But that's one way to make sure that you don't sound rehearsed.
Great.
So the next question that got upvoted, wow, 6 upvotes. What should you say if you genuinely have nothing to say in response to a question? That's a great question. So I gave a few or I talked a little bit earlier about the STAR method, right? One of the things that's kind of counterintuitive is you'll hear folks like me say, you should plan out your answers to interview questions before you go into an interview. But I know you're sitting there going, well, how do I plan out my answers if I don't know what the questions are, right? You don't find out the questions until you get to the interview. So how can you plan your answers? This is where if you have just a few of those STAR stories, more than likely you can end up using one of those answers to answer nearly any question. Fundamentally, whether you're interviewing for a school or a job or a scholarship, they're looking for a few things. Number one, does this person have strong values and good integrity? Meaning, are they a good person? Are they a good human? The next one, does this person have the drive and attitude to excel and contribute? And the third one, does this person have the learning agility? Meaning that if they get thrown a complex situation and they don't know the answer, are they a quick learner and are they going to be able to overcome that objective? These are some of the biggest areas that folks are looking for. Now, there might be dozens of questions that somebody might ask, but more often than not, one of those 3 areas is what they're going to be looking for an answer. So if you can brainstorm and put together a few of these answers, more likely than not, you can kind of leverage that story for nearly any question. And so that way you don't end up in that situation where you feel like you have nothing to say. The other thing that I'll say is when you get asked a question and you're not sure what to say, don't be afraid to, number one, just pause for a second or two. Pause for a second or two and gather your thoughts before you start answering. And worst case scenario, it is better to come back to that question than to try to make up an answer on the spot. Meaning, you can say something like, wow, that's a really thoughtful question. I would like to take just a second to think of a really great example to answer that question. Would it be okay if we moved on to another question and come back to this one right after? And that'll give you just a second to come up with the story that you can fit into that STAR method, and hopefully you can move on to something else. I've had candidates do that all the time, and the reality is that's okay. That's perfectly okay.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. We've got a tie here for 4 upvotes for the 2 top ones. Any of these stand out?
Yeah. So Max, is there a time where you can talk too much about a topic or a question if it's to the point? Yeah, the answer is yes. You should try to keep your answers for the most part 2 to 3 minutes at the most. So that's the short and easy answer for that. Short-term opportunities for internships and different for full-time? No. For the most part, they're pretty much similar opportunities. And to be honest, I would look at internships as long-term opportunities, because companies don't just hire interns for the benefit of the interns. There is a lot of benefit for interns, but they're really doing that because they're also looking for talent in the future. And internships are some of the best ways where they can find really great people and turn those into long-term opportunities.
Great. Well, Vincent, thank you so much for sharing your insights. In closing, anything you want to share, any resources or any ways that folks can keep in touch with you if they want more information about you or what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn is really, really great. It's never too early to create a LinkedIn profile. And so I'm going to throw my LinkedIn URL into the chat here. And don't be afraid to start building your connections and your network on LinkedIn. One little tip as you're reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, it's not necessary to type a note to somebody when you connect with them. But if you want to increase the chances that somebody will connect with you, you should hit the little connect button, and then there's an add note button, and just write a short sentence or two about why you want to connect with that person. So if you mention this session, send me a connection request. If you mention this session, that'll be an example of that personalized note. It's so awesome to be able to spend time with all of you. I really enjoyed hearing about what everybody is really excited about in the future. And these are challenging times. These are troubling times for sure. And I'm so excited to be able to have all of you leading and contributing to our society in the future. And, you know, what you're dreaming about, nothing that you're dreaming about is too big to be able to accomplish. And it took, for every major change in the world, it took one person to go, this is crazy, but I'm going to try to do it anyway, for every good thing that has ever happened in this world. So thank you all, everybody, for this time. So you got 2 LinkedIn links in the chat right there. So throw both of us a connection request, and don't forget to write just a short 1 or 2 sentence to personalize that message.
Great tips, Vincent. Thank you for the wise words you shared this evening. Thank you to everybody for attending. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.